Hi everyone, I'm Chabeli. I'm a board-certified anesthesiologist assistant, and today I'm covering money-related questions that I've received over the last couple of weeks. So if you've left any questions, I hope I've answered most of them, if not all. If there's any more questions, please leave them down below. My first question is, how much did you take out in loans, and how long do you think it'll take to pay back? I chose to live frugally during school, and I had some help from my parents in terms of living costs. So my total amount was $130,000, about that. And that includes some of the interest. I gave back a lot during school, and I had 2 other roommates. I also looked for an apartment that was very affordable. I was gonna room with 2 other people, but at the time, the place that they wanted to go to was more expensive and out of my budget. I had made a budget before I went into school and it just didn't work. So I ended up looking for 2 other roommates, and we were all pretty frugal there. And so that kept my total loan costs down. So about $130,000 when I graduated. I know some friends had 0 loans, so their family paid for it. I had other friends that came out for about $150,000, and then I've had friends that are in over $200,000, and that's just with the graduate program. I know that there are people that graduate with closer to $300,000, but I feel like that's usually when they have money carrying over from their undergraduate program or a different master's program. So there's a wide range of student loans that you might have when you graduate, depending on your whole situation. How do you manage your finances in terms of 401k, investments, and etc.? Before I even went into school, I had learned about Dave Ramsey's, and I would listen to his YouTube videos and things like that. And he recommends the snowball method, which is paying off the smallest loan first. And I don't go off that method. So I go off the avalanche method, which is paying back the highest percentage first. And mathematically, that is the best for you, because when you go off the smallest loan, sometimes that loan might have 3% interest versus a higher loan that might have 17% interest. The pros of the avalanche method over the snowball method is that in total, you're gonna pay less, you're gonna get out of debt quicker. However, the pros of the snowball method are that you're gonna have a psychological boost because you're paying down small numbers of debt quicker, and that might motivate you to keep on being on your debt journey. So you just choose whatever feels right for you. For me, I went with the numbers and I chose the avalanche method, but going with the snowball method also works. It really just comes down to you and what makes you pay down your debt quicker. So for me, throughout the program, every time I had a loan, I would make in my Excel sheets exactly how much it was, how much was taken towards school, and how much remained afterwards for living expenses. And I also calculated how much each percentage was. So along school, I was keeping track of that. All of us that were in school during COVID were fortunate enough to have a 0% interest during school. So I ended up putting back some of the money that was left over towards the highest percent during school, rather than waiting until I graduated, and that has decreased the highest percentage loan interest that I had. I also took a job very quickly out of school. I knew of this job that was offered to CAAs that would get you started very quickly, and it was very temporary as well. So I took that job, and I put, I would say, about $20,000 from that job towards my highest student loan interest loans, and then I ended up with about $100,000 in student loans after that, and I paused on paying back my student loans, and I put the rest of the money towards my Roth IRA for 2021. Within my Roth IRA, I went for index funds. That's what I had read about, and I listened to a couple of podcasts during my clinical year, and I got more familiar with index funds and different investment strategies. I went with Fidelity, and I chose a total US market index fund. So it's very similar to the S&P 500, so it covers the top 500 companies. So if you're within these companies, you're being very profitable, and if you fall out of that, they'll replace it with the next company that becomes profitable. So it's a self-cleansing index fund, so I don't really have to manage it. I just put my money in it, and it will do its own work for me until I retire. And that way I'm not aggressively researching companies. It's just something that is very low effort. So that's what I chose to do. And then when I started my next job in 2022, I ended up, instead of putting more money back towards my loans, I have put money into my Roth IRA for 2022. And this time I ended up putting a little bit into a bond index fund, because to put all of your money into just stocks is a little bit aggressive. So I ended up increasing the amount that I put into bonds. So I have about 90% or 95% in total US market stocks, and then I have about 5 5%, I believe, in bonds. Other than that, I have contributed towards my 401k through my job. I'm contributing about 10% per paycheck, so that will also decrease my taxes, which is nice. And then with my 401k, I'm contributing again towards an index fund that covers the total market. So it's low effort, and that's just what I do with that. I chose not to put more towards my student loans because Biden has paused student loan interest, so I'm just waiting to see what happens with that, and pending what he does, I'll put more towards my student loans, or I'll keep holding it in my bank account until something happens with student loans in general. I was considering refinancing my student loans, but I'm gonna see what President Biden decides to do. And if he ends up pausing it until the end of the year, I will probably just keep the money in my bank account. And then at the end of the year, put a large sum towards my student loans and hopefully pay most of it off. Next question is, how much money on average are you taking away with your 5 days, 8-hour work week schedule? And how much do you pay towards school loans after your education? So I almost always have overtime. Newer graduates tend to pick up more hours or more shifts, calls, things like that. So almost all of my paychecks have overtime included on them, but I would say probably on the lower end after taxes, it's about $4,000 to $5,000. And then it is beyond that with overtime and call. And in terms of how much I pay towards my school loans, my living expenses are smaller because I live with one roommate, which is my friend and coworker, and I also have a second roommate, which is my boyfriend. I have relatively low living expenses. I don't have a car payment. As a group, we don't eat out too much. I don't personally party that much. I don't drink. I keep my living expenses relatively low, so overall, I would say my living expenses are maybe 15% of my paycheck, maybe a little bit under. And so I'm saving about 85% currently in my bank account. And that will be going towards my loans once something happens with the federal student loan interest pause or cancellation. What's a realistic expectation one can make as a CAA if they're willing to travel and work overtime? I'm thinking of switching careers from business because if I'm going to work 50 hours a week, I might as well get paid for my extra time. So I agree with that. I have friends in the Midwest that on a salary basis are making $110 an hour. That doesn't include overtime or extra shifts, anything like that, bonus pays. So if you're willing to go to the Midwest, just with your salary W-2, you can make $110 an hour, which is incredible. And then if you want to stay in a different region, for example, Florida, I've heard of PRN rates of about $130 to about $150 an hour. So that would be typically as a 1099 employee. So you would be paying, taxes for that, but you could always write off expenses and things like that. You wouldn't get health insurance covered, but you would be making more per hour. So one of the CAs that graduated a year before me, I think went straight into PRN work and makes these high hourly rates. I think her partner basically covered the health insurance portion, so she wasn't worried about that, and she just went for the PRN position and has made more per hour. Awesome video. Do CAAs that specialize make more like MDs do? Okay, so in this question, I guess they're asking about people that do cardiac or do peds, OB. And so I would have to say it depends on the hospital. I've been to hospitals that will pay the same for people that do cardiac and people that do something like a lap chole. They don't pay more for doing cardiac. And then I've been to other hospitals that give $5,000 more for doing cardiac or $10,000 more for being on the cardiac, OB, and peds team. So it's hospital dependent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be paid more because you do these special cases. Also, you don't have to go into fellowship training. You'll get training during your school, and then more than likely you would get trained on the job. So you would be getting paid while you're getting trained at the same time, which is really nice. I would love a follow-up video in the future showing what experienced CAAs make in the industry compared to new grads, as well as leadership opportunities and what the jobs look like, task-wise and pay-wise. From what I saw when I was applying to jobs, I saw that for every 2 years of experience, you usually get a pay bump of $2,000 to $3,000. I don't know if that's going to change. Hopefully it'll increase because inflation has increased, but that's what I've seen. And then you could always get retention bonuses. You could become a chief if you wanted to move up and advance into that position. And my chief, I know she's in charge of PTO, organization, call shifts, deals with like the administrative tasks on our end. And I'm not sure how much more that pays, but there's opportunities for people to advance into those kind of managerial positions. That's all the questions I had compiled. If there's anything left that people want to ask about, feel free to leave that down below. And of course, I'll catch you next week. Have a great week. See ya.